We all know that praise is important, right? We should be doing it all the time as a leader, both privately and publicly. So, what's the big deal about good job? Well, if it's something you can say to your dog, you probably shouldn't say it to your employees. I hope you are curious. Let's get into it. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Culture Keepers podcast. My name is Kara List, and I'm your leadership coach. I'm so glad you're here with us on the podcast today, where we discuss topics that empower you as a leader to cultivate a thriving and, most importantly, a connected workplace culture where your people feel valued, seen, and heard. That is the work we're doing here, and I'm so glad you're here. And today we're going to talk about praise. And I just said that if it's something you could say to your dog, it's probably not something you should say to your employees. And I hope that got you curious because look, I have a golden retriever. Her name is Maisie and she is awesome. And good job is fully sufficient for her to be happy. That is all she needs to hear from me. But good job is not enough if you are a human. It doesn't tell you anything. If you were to listen to this podcast and then you were to send me an email that just said, "Hello, Kara, good job," you might mean it, but just saying good job doesn't really help me. It doesn't tell me what was good. So, how should we give praise? Our praise should be specific and clear. The way you give me praise should help me to understand what good actually is. So when you say good job, I know what you mean by good. So let's say you have a team member named Sam, and Sam is responsible for leading a meeting or a presentation, and you get to observe it. They get to the end, and you say, "Good job." They say, "Thanks." End of the conversation. So, what is Sam supposed to take away from that feedback? Instead, what if you said, "Hey, Sam, I really loved the illustrations you used in your presentation. It really helped drive your point home and it made it so relatable. I think you really hit the mark." You have successfully painted a picture for Sam of what good was, of what you thought was good. And so Sam can take that and apply it to the next time they do a presentation or have to run a meeting. So if you are honestly thinking that your employee did a good job enough for you to tell them, you need to work out what specifically was good about it. You know, nothing happens that is good by accident in your workplace, right? Your employees, they are working together, they are doing their thing to make the work happen. If anything good is happening, it is because someone is doing something right. So you can practice this kind of specific praise week by week by simply considering what went well this week. If it didn't fail, if we didn't collapse, something went well. What was it and who was responsible for it? And start there. That's going to be your anchor for this practice in your mind of giving praise that is anchored to helpful information, right? Anchored to what is good, what is going well. Let's figure out what those things are and let's replicate them, because if those things caused us not to collapse this week, we got to do that next week. And so, how can you kind of get into this pattern of giving this sort of praise on a regular basis? Well, my recommendation is in your weekly staff meeting, the time where you gather each week. And you don't have to spend a ton of time doing this. There is a way for you to take the first 10 minutes of your staff meeting and make it the most valuable point of connection in your entire week. And it includes praise in this way. It also includes 3 other things. And I have laid this template out in my ultimate meeting kickoff. It is a free guide and you should use it at your staff meeting this week. So go ahead and grab it at www.heycaralist.com/kickoff, or you can just grab the link right there in the show notes. Okay, so let's go back to Sam. Let's say he had his presentation and you say, "Good job, Sam." But Sam actually thought the presentation was awful. Walked away feeling terrible about how the presentation went. So what happens to your well-intended praise, your good job, if Sam doesn't think that he did a good job? Well, your well intentioned praise is totally wasted. But if you can highlight what was good for Sam, if you can say, those illustrations really connected to people, it helped people understand your point, that was so good, then even if Sam thought he did a terrible job, he can walk away feeling like, well, at least I know that was good and I can build on that, right? There's somewhere I can go from here. Okay, but what if the presentation didn't go well? So Sam gets up, gives his presentation, feels terrible because it didn't go well. In our previous example, you found the things that did go well, right? You were able to encourage. But what if it was awful? Like, what if Sam totally bombed? And Sam feels really awful and you hate that for him. And you really hate it for you because you don't want to have to address how bad it was. So you just say, hey, good job, Sam. Kim Scott, in the awesome book Radical Candor, a must read, would call this manipulative insincerity. It's insincere because you don't mean it. You don't actually think Sam did a good job. And it's manipulative because you are using praise to get out of saying the hard thing, of really telling the truth. And that's manipulative. So, friends, if it isn't true, don't say it. If they didn't do a good job, don't say they did a good job. Because here's the truth, and you all know this. When you do a bad job and you know it, and someone tells you you did a good job, you either think that they are lying to you or they don't know anything. So I am a musician. My bachelor's degree is actually in music education. So I've been participating in music my whole life. I play piano, I sing, all these things. Well, I went to my little sister's medical school graduation several years ago, and she went to school in New York. So the graduation was at Carnegie Hall, which was pretty amazing. And it was just me and my dad who attended her graduation ceremony. And they introduce the musical group that is going to sing the national anthem at the beginning of the ceremony. And it's some like medical vocal group. They had some cheesy name like the Palpitations or something like that. So we all stand, they start to sing, and it is not long into the song that I am terrified that it's going to crash and burn. I mean, it was so bad. And I'm not being hypercritical. I'm not being snobby. Like, it was really, really awful. And it finished, and I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, what did you think about that performance? And he said, I thought it was good. Now, something to know about my dad. My dad is tone deaf. He loves music. He loved coming to all of me and my sister's musical performances growing up. He sings with passion, fully off key, and we love him for it. But my dad knows nothing about music. And so he observed this vocal ensemble singing the national anthem. And because of his lack of knowledge, he said it was good. So I wouldn't go to my dad to ask him what he thought about one of my performances, because I would understand that he wouldn't really have much feedback to give me. I would go to my husband, who is also a musician. We actually met in music school. And I would go to him for my musical feedback. But if Josh told me, my husband's Josh, if he told me that I did a good job and I knew I did a bad job, I would know he's lying. And lying erodes trust. So you are not fooling anybody by telling them they did a good job when they know they didn't. If anything, you are harming yourself. You're harming their opinion of you because they will either think you are not knowledgeable or lying. It harms your relationship. They can't trust you to be honest. And it harms them because you're not giving them anything to use for growth. And look, leadership is uncomfortable. You know this, I know this, and we too often choose our comfort over someone else's growth. It is easier to say good job than to help them see what wasn't good. But that is self-preservation, and it just isn't leadership, friend. It's not leadership. And I'm telling you this because I, along with every leader who's ever managed a team, can point back to an example where they chose their own comfort over someone else's growth. I have an example of an employee that I had years and years ago, and I gave her a project that was a pretty big project. I thought I was pretty clear about it, but time after time, when I would get more of the work passed into me as it was happening, it was missing the mark. It wasn't it. But I saw how hard she was trying. Like I saw the effort and I saw she really wanted it to be good. And it just crushed me to have to tell her that it wasn't good, but I knew that it wasn't good because there was just so much effort and I felt so bad. This is manipulative insincerity. Do you hear it? I felt so bad. I didn't want to say the hard thing. I knew she was putting in all this effort. So instead, what I did was encouraged her effort. I encouraged the good things that I saw. And then I actually had to pass the project on to someone else to clean it up and to get it done. And eventually that person was let go. And she was probably let go like way longer after she should have been let go. But I kept her because I felt bad telling her the truth. And that wasn't good for her. It wasn't good for our team. I mean, everyone else on the team could see it was missing the mark, right? So that was eroding trust. It was eroding productivity, and it just wasn't a good thing altogether. It was ultimately self preservation. And I was using false praise to keep myself comfortable. And I know you want a culture of excellence. You want your work to be awesome because it serves a greater purpose. It serves real people with real products. You want it to be excellent, and vague praise creates a culture of mediocrity, and that is not what you want. So call your people to excellence by praising them specifically and clearly, and only when it is called for. And I want to clarify, we should be praising all the time. So when I say when it is called for, you are always looking for the ways to praise your people because they are always there. And that's why you can use the ultimate meeting kickoff and make sure it's happening regularly every single week. But if it is specifically not called for, then it is just fake praise to give it at the wrong time and in the wrong way. So I have 3 final takeaways for you. Praise should be clear, specific, and correct. And so I added correct to this first takeaway because I want to be clear that praising the wrong people or the wrong thing is also a big mistake. Have you ever been in a situation where your boss praises someone else for the work you did? And in your mind, you're like, that was me. And that work is mine. And it's all because that boss just didn't have the information, right? They didn't have the correct information. And so in a effort to praise and be that encouraging boss, they spoke incorrectly, and that caused much greater harm than value. So be clear and specific and correct. The second takeaway is this kind of praise paints a picture of excellence by calling out, this is what went well, and this is what we want to do again. So using praise in this way paints a picture for your team of what excellence is and what you want to see more of moving forward. And my third and final takeaway is avoid praise for praise's sake. Don't give it unless it's true and it's helpful. If it doesn't promote progress, if it could be said to a dog, don't say it. So those are my 3 takeaways, but I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, so what about when Sam doesn't do a good job? We mentioned that. Then how do we provide encouragement along with feedback and critique without it being fake or manipulatively insincere? Because we don't just want to be directly challenging Sam in a way that crushes him. We want to be able to give encouragement along with our feedback and critique. So how do we do it in the right way without it being vague or fake praise? Well, friends, that is a podcast episode for next week. So you're going to have to come back and hear that one next week. Okay, my challenge to you, just reflect on your praise habits and think about giving specific praise this week. Avoid saying good job with nothing else attached to it. And again, to quote Kim Scott of Radical Candor, she would say, this kind of praise is radical candor, which is caring personally, and challenging directly. And that, my friend, is excellent leadership. Well, now that I've teased next week, make sure you come back and check out that episode and make sure you give this podcast a rating and review. I would just love to hear from you. Would love to hear if this is helpful. Don't just say good job. Tell me what you liked about it. Go ahead and do that for me and then share this episode with your leader friends. Hopefully it was an encouragement to you and will be an encouragement to others. Okay, I'm cheering you on and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.